Hey friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so glad you're here. Each week on this show, I invite a girlfriend to join me and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. From Slate in collaboration with Ford comes the new podcast, Life on the Fast Track. Cheer on 3 Girl Scouts as they design, build, and race wooden cars in the Ford Girls Fast Track races. We'll meet their families, use power tools, and hear what happens when girls are empowered to put STEAM principles to the test. Download and subscribe to the Life on the Fast Track wherever you get your podcast. Guys, you're listening to episode number 177, and my guest is Kat Harris. Kat is a photographer and runs the blog The Refined Woman from where she lives in New York City. On today's show, Kat shares how God used her time in the fashion industry to refine her passion for helping women believe that they matter because of what God says about them and not their status, their fashion, their looks, money, or anything else. We dive into work-life balance, and she talks about hitting rock bottom with no balance in her life and the changes that she made. One of my favorite moments from today's conversation is when Kat says this.
Give ourselves permission to be in process, and then to give the other people in our lives also permission to be in their own journey, because we're all different human beings on different paths.
Guys, we even talk about dating, being single while living in New York City, and her choice to remain a virgin until she's married. Oh, and there's this certain Justin that we both love following on Instagram. You guys, we are now officially less than a week away from the release of my very first book, If You Only Knew. And no worries, I'm just super cool about it over here. No roller coaster of emotions or anything, whatever. You guys, people have asked me how I'm feeling, and my only answer is that I'm feeling every single emotion possible. But seriously, I'm super honored and humbled that people trust me enough to read my words, that people are interested in my stories. I'm also downright excited about the message of the book. I believe in it with everything that's in me, and so therefore, it's super easy for me to share it with you. You can still pre-order the book and it will show up on your doorstep on January 30th. You can get it wherever books are sold, whether you go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble online or Lifeway.com. Guys, we also start our book tour February 1st in Dallas, Texas. From there, we go to Atlanta, Austin, Northwest Arkansas, Seattle, San Antonio, and we finish strong in Nashville. I'd love to see you at one of these events. They're going to be super fun, food and drinks with a special guest joining me at each one. It's just the girls' night you've been looking forward to. Get all the information about my book and the book tour over at my webpage, jamieivey.com. Also, friends, don't forget about the mini-series that we air every single Friday. The interviews are about 20 minutes long, and they are the perfect way to start your weekend. This Friday, my friend Sean Osmond joins me, and we chat about addiction and abortion. You're not going to want to miss this week. All right, my friends, here is my conversation with Kat. Hey, Kat, welcome to the Happy Hour.
Hey, Jamie, how are you?
I'm fabulous, and I'm super excited to have you on here because I was telling you before we started recording, and this always feels awkward to say, but you know what I mean, is that when I read what you wrote me and when I see you online, I think if I lived in the same city as you, we would be friends.
Well, that is just very encouraging because I feel the same way about you. And I think the internet and social media world is kind of weird, right? Because like we put parts of ourselves out there and you're like, I know that like Jamie is a complete stranger and I shouldn't know these like personal details of her life, but I do. And now I just want to like know her heart. So
I know.
I feel very similarly.
Social media for the win.
I know. You know what? Sometimes it is like totally a win. And I'm like, it makes the world smaller. And I just think we get to be like more intentional about our connections.
Totally. I
love it.
And you run a website called The Refined Woman, which is just beautiful. It is so beautiful. How long have you been doing that?
Thank you. I started The Refined Woman just about like 5 years ago this January. So it's definitely been a labor of love and taken on many different forms and evolved over the last 5 years. But it's definitely one of those things, if I can be frank, I never wanted to start a blog. I was like, Lord, the last thing this world needs is another blog. And I know you didn't ask me how I started it, but I'll go ahead and tell you.
I would love to hear.
But I was leaving New York Fashion Week about 6 years ago after shooting my 12th season of Runway. And I felt like God put it on my heart to start an online platform for women to connect. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. And then I just felt like he was like, there's an invitation for you here. And so begrudgingly, I started the Refined Woman with one of my girlfriends. And what I started kind of dragging my feet, it has now become like my biggest passion. And I feel an area where God is really using my calling. And so I just feel so grateful that I get to do it and get to connect with women like you and share stories of hope and encouragement and process. And so I love it. I get like giddy about it.
That's how I feel about my show. And it's really fun when you find this kind of groove and you think, I love this and I was made for this. I want to read from your blog about the manifesto for the Refined Woman because I want to be this woman. Okay, here we go. She is clothed in dignity, authenticity, integrity, and grace. She believes in quality over quantity. She follows her instincts. She is brave and honest. She is a leader, a dreamer, a trailblazer, an achiever. She is a visual storyteller and relational to her core. She celebrates femininity and I messed up that word. She celebrates femininity in all of its forms. She is a refined woman. Did you write that?
My team and I wrote it.
I love it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was, it's just kind of been our prayer and the cry of our heart that, I think the thing that I see a lot online and just in our culture right now with women is like, you can be all things to all people all the time. And I'm like girl power 1000%, but I feel like that's exhausting. So what does it look like to like have quality over quantity and say, sometimes, done is better than perfect. And what if it is not about me arriving to some destination, but me being honest in my process? So I honestly think that manifesto started off as like one of my journal entries. And I was just like, Lord, this is what I want this to be. And then as a team, we kind of teased it out and, more so for us to be like, this is like who we are and what we want to stand for.
Well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned a while ago that you were shooting your 13th runway. Explain that to me.
So it's funny because I feel like I have these two different worlds that I don't know if a lot of people know that they're a refined woman. I think more people are knowing, but my day job is I'm an editorial and wedding photographer. And I've been a full-time photographer for almost a decade and started my own. I worked for a really incredible photographer in LA for years. I got my start from him and then started my own business. But my old boss shot runway in New York twice a year. And I just begged and begged and begged him to let me come with him. And I was just this girl from Texas that hardly knew how to turn on a camera. And for whatever reason, this guy gave me a chance. And I was like, please just let me come to runway. I've never been to New York. And finally, after a few seasons, he was like, you can come, but you got to pay your own way and you got to figure out how to shoot runway on your own. So my first trip to New York City was when I was 25 and I was in the photographer's pit at a fashion show. And I was like, what is my life? How did I get here? So
did you love it?
Oh my gosh, it's funny because now like I hate Fashion Week. I'm like, get me away. I'm like, I feel like I'm too old and too tired. I don't want to be working 19-hour days. But oh my gosh, yeah. I was like, I'm this Texas girl sitting like in a photographer's pit with people that have shot runway for 30 years. I mean, it just felt so glamorous and sexy. And we worked for a magazine that would wine and dine us in the city and we had car service. And so I was like, New York City really is like Gossip Girl.
Yes.
Like, people get driven around and have chauffeurs. And the funny part is like, then I moved to New York and was like, oh, like, where's my car service?
Exactly. And you're there like, get a cab. Yeah.
So yeah, it's, I feel like God really used the fashion industry and my experience with runway to kind of reawaken my heart for women in that industry, because I was actually a fashion major in college. And then I was a really new Christian and I just got to a point where I was super burnt out and I was like, why does fashion even matter? So long story, very condensed, is I transferred schools, went to Dallas Baptist. I became a Bible major. I was like, I'm going to be the next Beth Moore. I'm going to graduate and be a speaker and write curriculum for the rest of my life. And then God had different plans for me, and I got into the nonprofit world and really was able to see that, all right, I can do ministry and life and missions and live intentionally. And it doesn't have to be necessarily with a Christian organization. And then through that, I stumbled upon this photographer, and he gave me a chance to work with him, and then introduced fashion industry. And it's kind of been this like weird full circle of like, I remember being on my first editorial shoot in New York that I was head shooter on. So this was maybe a couple seasons after my first time shooting runway. And girl, I have no idea why this company even hired me. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to use the lighting or the flashes. I was like researching on Google the night before. But I get on set that day, and it was a pretty transformative experience for me, because I was a head shooter. I had my stylist, my team, my hair and makeup, and we had this crazy 10-hour day of shooting. And right at the end of the day, the model came up to me while she was leaving, and she just like, this girl's been on covers of magazines, and she's like beautiful, has a perfect body, everything. And she came up to me like quietly and gave me a hug with like little tears in her eyes and says, "Thank you so much for asking me my name today. No other photographer has ever asked me that." And I just was like, "You're welcome. I gotta go." I can't really talk
gosh.
But I just felt like in that moment, God was like, like, this is your ministry. And, you can speak life over people and women and offer a different dialogue in this industry. And let people know that they're loved and seen and valued and cared for. And you can bring a different atmosphere when you go into a room. And so that's sort of how the photography piece started, and the runway. And then a few years after that, the blog, kind of similar vision of what does it look like to offer a different dialogue in a culture, in an industry that says I matter because of what I do, my status, the power I do or do not have, the people I do or do not know, what size I am or am not, how many wrinkles I have on my forehead. What does it look like to go to the core of that industry and say, actually, you know what? I matter from the inside out. I am imago Dei, made in the image of God. And because of that, I am secure and confident and grounded. And so that's I feel like kind of what God put on my heart through all of it.
Well, I love that she said that to you, because I think that it's evident even in your like industry that you're in, but all of us, if you call yourself a Christ follower, like you have something in you that's different, and you have something to offer the world. And you don't have to be Beth Moore to do that you can do it in your industry. Just finding out what is your name and meeting someone and being kind, it goes a long way. Kat, you know what is really funny? And if my husband were here, he would be giggling right now, because you said you went to DBU.
Patriots.
I went to DBU as well.
What?
But I'd never tell anybody, because
oh my gosh,
when I went to DBU, I was like a different person. Like, for example, if you happen to get my book and read it, you will see the person I was at DBU. Although I don't say in there that's the university, but that's where I was, because I was just like, I was crazy and wild. What years were you there? Just tell me this. We weren't there at the same time. I'm older than you.
I was there. Oh my gosh. The spring of
if it starts with an O, I'm 10 years older than you.
I was just there for 2 years.
Okay. I was there for 2 years as well.
Okay.
Go Patriots.
And so you said you were wild as in like party
animal,
crazy, all the things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Party animal.
Well, they really didn't know what to do with me either. Cause I was a Bible major, and everyone would be like, "So why are you a Bible major? You're a woman, so you can't really do anything in the church." And I was like,
oh gracious. You're like, just let me study the Bible and you'll see what I can do.
Okay. So, I was front row center every single class, raising my hand, ruffling feathers. I don't understand this. What about this? What about this? And I just remember all these guys in my class being like, "You poor thing, you'll never really be able to use your major because you're a woman."
I've got like the hair standing up on my body right now.
I know. But, the funny thing is, like God his plans for our life are bigger and more imaginative and creative than we could ever even think for ourselves. I remember, even just 5-6 years ago being a photographer and being like, why in the world was I a Bible major if God just wanted me back in this industry? And I see his purpose in that because I got this season of time. It was this incubator of time, even though I resisted a lot of it. But, I was able to spend time going through really deep and hard questions. Like, what does it mean that there is evil in the world and there is a good God? Like, how do we reconcile that? So there's definitely been moments where that, like, my education has been more like a foundation and a landing pad for me as I've kind of driven around in an airplane and been like, I don't really know what I feel about these things. Like, I'm confused, I'm struggling in my faith, but really to be like, okay, I do have this foundation.
Yeah. Here's what I know to be true.
Yeah.
I always say that. It's what I said it today on another interview. Like, it's that foundation that you build that will be there in the middle of the storms, in the middle of the questions, in the middle of the things. Right. That foundation is there. Okay. So I'm so impressed with people who we can have conversations about work and life balance. And it's such a myth. We talk about on the show a lot that there is this myth that we can do it all. And you even mentioned it earlier. And there's a myth of, you can be the best mom doing everything and the best worker doing everything. Like, some things you have to say no to. Right. You kind of had to find out the hard way about this work-life balance a couple of years ago. What happened in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think I was in a place for, I would say, the entire decade of my 20s where I just was willing to do anything and everything for my career. And I've always been a hustler. I was an athlete in high school and college and just always very driven. And so, I would find myself working like 80-hour work weeks and being like, it's okay. Like, if I just get here, then I can do this. And I want to get like this many followers, or I want to have my business at this level so that I can do this. And then I think moving to New York even exacerbated that even more. Just the pace of life I was running on was just really intense. And a couple of years ago, but back up before I say that, I feel like we have the theology that we have in our head that we say, oh, I believe like God is good and God is in control and I can trust him. But then we have our functional theology. This is how I actually live out my everyday life. And I really think functionally the way I was living through most of my 20s, is that I am the captain of my own ship.
Yeah. You were in control of everything.
Right. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. And I think even as a small business owner, it really did and does feel like that sometime. Like, if I ain't working, I ain't working.
And that's
if
hard.
I take a day off, right.
That there's this hard balance. Yeah. And so it was getting the best of you.
Right. And so I think actually, if that is true, if it is true that I am captain of my own ship and I am responsible for myself and everyone else in my life, then if things go wrong, that's scary. And that's a really traumatic place to be. And what felt like seemingly out of nowhere, I started having these really debilitating anxiety attacks. And I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was dying and I thought I was having like a heart attack. I was blacking out, vomiting, and I would be on set at a shoot.
Oh gosh.
And thankfully I have an incredible team and I would like dismiss myself quietly. But I remember being at a shoot and laying in the bathroom stall on the ground, on the tile floor, just sobbing and trying to get myself together enough just to go back and finish. Cause I was like, I don't know what's happening to me. Like, I think I'm really losing it.
Yeah.
And
which, if anyone's ever had an anxiety attack, which I have, that you really feel as though you are completely out of control and you don't know what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the interesting thing is, I remember, like, I've had people in my family struggle with anxiety, and I've heard women talk about it at conferences, and I just really didn't have any compassion for it. I was like, why don't you take a nap and calm down?
Right.
Stop being so stressed out. But that kind of was what I call like the beginning of my unraveling of God really stopping me in my tracks and getting my attention. Like something was not working, in my life. And once the anxiety attacks started happening, I went to some really amazing doctors and have a really incredible community that really helped me move through this, and just realized like I was having autoimmune disorders. I was becoming allergic to food. Essentially, cortisol had been pumping through my body for so long that my body was like in self-sabotage mode. And so it was like a time where I had to stop and just ask myself, like, what is the life I want to have? And what does living a life that is sustainable, that's setting me up for the next 50 years look like? And so first of all, the big thing for me was identifying the fear and unbelief and lies that I was believing in my life, and repenting of that and replacing it with truth. Like a lie I was believing to my core was, it's everything is up to me. All the weight of the world and my career and my future is on my shoulder. So then if I'm on set and something goes wrong and I'm the captain of the ship, then that sends a signal to my brain that's like, warning, warning, this is bad.
Fight or flight.
Bad.
Yeah.
Fight or flight.
Yep.
So the cortisol pumps through. So, I mean, it was really back to the basics for me to really begin to take my thoughts captive and be like, okay, that's actually not true. What's true is that God is sovereign. God is in control. I am safe. I am safe with him. I can let go and trust and surrender to him. And even if the worst case scenario unfolds and happens, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay because God loves me. He sees me, and it's going to be good.
So tell me this, Kat, though, as I'm listening, I'm like, okay, yes, I agree. Yes, yes, yes. In a practical way, when you are working 80 hours a week and busting your tail and building a business and doing all these things, whether even someone's listening is like, I don't do that, but I bust my tail with 7 kids and, all these things. Practically telling those things to us so that we can believe them. Yes. How did you practically play that out in your world every day?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, that was a big practical step for me, is like when anxiety symptoms would start coming up, of being like, okay, what do I feel? Because at first I would just get overwhelmed with like, my palms are sweating. Oh, like I feel like my heart rate is kind of scary. Oh my gosh, like panic.
Yeah.
Whereas like, okay, what am I afraid of right now? Like what am I afraid of right now? What lie am I believing?
So you change the narrative a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So really calling that and being like, okay. And then reaching out and asking for support. Like I had a handful of people that if anything started happening, they knew without asking, if I would text them or call them and be like, hey, I need you to pray for me right now. They would. So there was that. But then kind of also the day-to-day practical things was, I decided, you know what? I may live in a culture where 80 hours a week is glorified, but I'm working 40. And so I started a process of really making disciplined choices in my life of, I'm working 40 hours a week. So I need to be more organized in my day-to-day life. That means if I'm shooting for 12 hours on a Saturday, I'm taking Friday off. I went back to the basics of, all right, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep tonight. And some people are in different seasons of life and can't get that many hours, but there's like our basic, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like we need to know that we have shelter over our head. We need to have food, oxygen, all these basic needs. So it was sleep. It was, all right, I'm going to make sure I have 3 meals and snacks today because by the way, I have like low blood sugar and low blood pressure and a really low resting heart rate. So if I go a long time without eating, then my body does kind of go into this shock mode. So really setting myself up for success.
Which even those practical steps are you changing the narrative of I'm not in control. And I believe that God is in control, even if I only work 40 hours a week.
Right.
Instead of 80.
And he's the author of my career. And I think too, that's kind of going back to like, what is the lifestyle I want to have? And what also is the story that I'm inviting other people into? Like I run this whole platform of you matter because of who you are, not what you do. And then here I am like running around like a mad woman, like I have to do all these things. I have to let these women know that they matter. And wait, and then I need to do this. And then I need to do this. Like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Like I can't change anyone. That is up to God and God alone.
Totally.
And if I'm not living my message first, if I don't believe that I am loved and seen and worthy, then I can't share that message with others. So it starts with me. So I even think, to the woman who's like wrangling, all these small children who she's like probably listening to my story. Well, it might be nice to have 8 hours of sleep every once in a while. But I think even just stuff like one of the things that I just made things that were non-negotiable, and like, I can't compare myself to another woman on her journey or another person on their journey, but something little of my day starts with me being in the Word and me having time with Jesus. Well, for maybe the mom who has 6 kids or the person who works in finance that has to be at work at 5 a.m. and our quote unquote quiet time doesn't work for them.
Right.
But what if we start with, what if you grab a cup of coffee and sit down and have 5 minutes of silence? Maybe read one verse. Like that matters. That really matters.
Yeah. I love how you said about not comparing yourself to the other people's journeys, because I think that can be one of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves too. And we're talking about changing the narrative and believing what is true. And your journey through what you've been through looks different. And so we can't compare ourselves to that. Another thing that you mentioned to me was the sustainable transformation, which I think is just brilliant, especially this time of year. We're like a month into the new year and just trying to figure out, what is my life going to look like these days? And a lot of times we're like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then you fail and you think, well, I'm never going to try again. When you talk about sustainable transformation, and I know you've been talking about it kind of in a roundabout way already, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. What I mean by that is, first of all, I think we're a culture of extremists, and it's like, well, I'm only gonna go to the gym if I can work out for 2 hours at 5 a.m. before I go into work, or I'm going to do Whole30 for a whole month. And then the day it ends, go back to eating crazy. Or I'm only going to spend time with God if it looks like this extended period of time. I think I started seeing in my own life, especially through my healing journey out of participating with fear and anxiety, is that like God is a God of process. And I will pray every day for those instantaneous moments of healing and transformation. But for whatever reason, my life experience has been, and I really feel like this is out of God's kindness, that He has led me through a process. And so when I say that I want to create space for others and myself to have actual sustainable transformation, I would say, okay, what's the big goal you want? And just to name one off the top of my head is, well, I want to run a marathon. Okay. Well, have you ever run before? No, I haven't really ever run before. Okay. So you're not going to be able to run a marathon next month. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. Right. So maybe let's start instead, if you're not working out at all, let's try like 3 times a week going on a 15-minute walk. Well, let's try that for a little bit. Okay. Then let's try, maybe 4 times a week for 30 minutes. Being more like, let's be in it for the long term. I think we're like, well, I want to read the Bible in 2 months. And then you're 3 weeks in and you're like, I cannot keep up this pace. Right. And I think we do that. We're like, well, I want to see this massive change in my life, but we're not willing for time to move on. And I mean, I see that all throughout, scripture, as God has huge plans for different characters in the Bible. And like, for instance, Hannah in the Old Testament, for years and years and years, she's begging God for a child. And she's like, I just want one child, just give this thing to me. And she's persistent and persistent and persistent. And it seems like God is not active and everyone else thinks she's crazy. And her husband has the right to throw her on the street because she's not leaving him a namesake. the priest in the church thinks she's coming to the temple drunk, but she's like, no, I just want one kid. I just want one kid.
Right.
Well, I love what scripture says. It says like something like in his time, in God's time, Hannah bore a son. And then if we read further into, and then that son ends up being in the lineage of Christ. She ends her life with 5 children. And I see that and I'm just like, man, I pray for something. And then 5 hours later, I'm like, well, I guess, it's not up to me. Or it's God's not answering. He's being silent and quiet. And I just think, God's timing is different than ours. And I think we give up so quickly. And when I say we, I also say me, like I give up so quickly. So I think creating that sustainable change in our lives, like I think we can pray and be faithful and ask God for miracles and believe and have hope, because God says like hope does not put us to shame. But we also have responsibility in our own lives to take ownership of like, okay, if I'm always late to things, then I want to change. I want to change that and be a woman of my word and show up not only on time, but 5 minutes early. Well, if you've been living one way for 20, 30 years of your life, and then all of a sudden you're like, from now on, no more struggle. I just don't think that. I feel like we are constantly like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah. You're setting ourselves up for failure.
Right. And to give ourselves permission to be in process, and then to give the other people in our lives also permission to be in their own journey, because we're all different human beings on different paths. And yeah, I feel I'm starting to babble now.
No, I love that about give each other permission to be on their own process. I was even thinking about that with parenting of like, my kids are on a process. I don't expect them to be 12-year-old humans to what they might be when they're 25. Right. And so giving them that process as well.
Right.
Okay, guys, I know you're loving this show with Kat. And first, I want to thank some of our sponsors. First, I want to thank Wink. Okay, I'm going to give you a task. Pick out a wine that you're going to love, but there's a catch. It has to be one you haven't had before. Where would you start? All right, guys, I want to introduce you to Wink. You spell that W-I-N-C. Wink makes it easy to discover great wine. Here's why. Because Wink's wine experts select wines matched to your taste, personalized just for you, and shipped right to your door. And here's the best part, guys, starting at just $13 a bottle. There's nothing like coming home to a box of delicious Wink wine selected just for you. It's the best day of your month. Am I right? Here's how this happens. You fill out Wink's palate profile quiz. You answer simple questions that your average store clerk wouldn't ask or be able to translate into a recommendation. Questions like, how do you take your coffee? And how do you feel about blueberries? Then Wink sends wines curated to your taste. The more wines you rate, the more personalized your monthly selection. Each month, there are new delicious wines like the insanely popular Summer Water Rosé. No membership fees, skip any month, cancel anytime. Shipping is complimentary. And if you don't like a bottle they send you, they're going to replace it with a bottle you'll love, no questions asked. You can even send a personalized gift card so you can let your recipient choose their wine from Wink's great selection. You don't have to guess what they like. Wink will figure it out. Discover great wine today. Go to trywink.com/happy and you're going to get $20 off your first shipment. That's trywink, TRYWINC.com/happy for $20 off. Trywink.com/happy. Okay, I want to thank our next sponsor, and that is Go-Go Squeeze. Go-Go Squeeze believes that every kid should get the energy they need to explore, play, and just be kids. Fuel their adventures with great snack that is just as tasty as is good for them. Go-Go Squeeze. Go-Go Squeeze is made from 100% all-natural fruit with no artificial anything. And that is something that makes this mama very happy. Nothing but orchard fresh apples and other wholesome fruit, all in a squeezable pouch that's ready to go wherever they go. And any kid will tell you that Go-Go Squeeze is delicious. They've got over 25 amazing flavors. The great taste of apples blended with strawberry, banana, cinnamon, and so much more. Or check out their fruit and veggie blends with veggies such as butternut squash. There's even yogurt in a pantry-friendly pouch. These things are truly amazing. All right, guys, so pack the lunchbox with something delicious for the kids that you can feel great about as well. Go-Go Squeeze fruit on the go pouches. Find them in the applesauce aisle today. All right, guys, here is the rest of my conversation with Kat, and we're about to dive in her desire to be married and how she feels about being a virgin at 32. Okay, so you were talking about Hannah and praying and begging God for something. And I know that you mentioned to me that there's something personal in your own life that you have been begging God and God, I really want this. Where are you?
Right.
And you're not married and you desire to be married. Tell me about that struggle right now in your life.
Oh gosh, we're going there.
Let's go.
Let's do it. We're diving in. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing is ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a mom. I was like, I want to be a wife. I want to be a mom. And that's just, I never had career aspirations or career goals. And so sometimes I'll have these moments as I'm like walking the streets in New York City and I'm like, what in the world am I doing here? This is not the life that I expected or anticipated for myself. I thought I would go to, DBU, get my
Find
MRS
you a husband.
degree.
That's right.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
And, I can look back now and, oh my gosh, if I would have gotten married when I was 21 years old, I would have married a narcissistic person that I was trying to work out all of my daddy issues with. And I can say, God, praise God that he did not give me what I wanted when I wanted it.
Yeah.
Cause he has had a massive process of healing for me, of just really kind of dealing through a lot of stuff in my past. But yeah, I mean, now I'm 32 years old, single, and I'm a virgin. I am waiting until marriage to have sex, which in New York is like,
you're like a unicorn.
Oh my gosh. I like go on, even it's very uncommon, even within the church here to be waiting.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I get on date 2 with someone and they're like, you're doing what?
And then a lot of times, is it over?
Yeah, it is. And, but here's the thing that I know is I've finally got to a place where I know that I would rather be single than be with a man that's not a good fit for me, a man that doesn't love Jesus. I know that if God has a man for me, it's a man that loves him deeply, has a tender heart for the Lord, has integrity and vision for his life, and supports the vision that God has for my life. So when I'm in a good place, I'm like, yeah, like I'm fine. Yeah. I know that I would rather this than that. But then there's I feel like I ended 2017 just processing through disappointment and hurt with God. I was like, God, I really went into 2017 thinking that I heard pretty clearly from God that like now is the time, that he was like, I feel like he said, now is the time. It's time for the harvest. Like, you've been faithful. Now it's time for a new season and a season of marriage. And so I'm like, okay, so that means now, that means today. And it's not that I don't think God didn't say that to me. I really do think he put that on my heart, but it just didn't turn out the way I thought. So I ended 2017 single with like, girl, I feel like I could have a documentary on my dating life this last year in New York City. I mean, the stories, just being stood up, being ghosted, going on really amazing dates, and then just feeling like God said, no. And I just am like, God, thank you. Like my girlfriends and I say, rejection is protection. And I'm like, that's true, because there are times where I would not have had the courage to walk away from a relationship with a man. And then God changes their heart for me. And then I'm like, okay, I see 2020 hindsight. That was not the person you had for me. But I'm like, God, I'm just ready for a freaking yes.
Right.
Like, I don't want 10 yeses. I don't need 100 yeses. I just want one.
I want one. Kat, it's interesting because when you mentioned to me that you were a virgin, and it was none of my business, but you just told me, I do think, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I think this is something that a lot of young people feel as though isn't that big of a deal, and they love God and they want to pursue Jesus with their whole heart, and they want to marry a godly man. But this is one area of their life that they're willing to let go. Am I right about this? And I know I'm like, married for 17 years. So I feel a little bit out of, my league here with this conversation, but do you feel that I'm right about that?
I do think you're right about that. And I think the older we get, the more like, I didn't struggle not having sex with guys I was dating for for all my teens and most of my 20s, really until like I think I was like 28 or 29, and I dated this guy where I was like, oh, heaven help me.
Yep.
I want to take off all my clothes.
Right.
Just because I think as we get a little older, I think I'm in my sexual prime right now. So I'm like, I'm on date 2, and I'm like, I want to go back to my bedroom and like make out with you in my bed. Whereas like, I think when I was younger, I didn't have as much of that desire. And so I've written about this on my blog. It's a series called Sexless in the City. But I talk about my process of moving to New York and falling in love with a guy and getting to a point where I was really like, does God really want me to wait?
Right.
And should I wait? Or is this just some antiquated thing because I'm from Texas and I went to a thing at my youth group when I was 17?
And I signed True Love Waits.
Right. And so I spent the better part of an entire year literally looking up every single verse in the Bible that talked about sex. And just in case anyone wants to know, it actually does say very many times to abstain from sex until marriage. But I think also what I realized, and this is the thing, is I think we stop at the rule and we're like, well, okay, like God says not to have sex. Okay, whatever. But I think for me, that wasn't compelling enough for me to an extent. I was like, I want it. And so I had to like really step back and kind of look through my dating history and see like, wow, when I add the physical element of a relationship into dating prematurely, it clouds my vision. And I can't tell you how many guys I dated way longer than I needed to be dating because we had good physical chemistry.
Right.
And realizing like, man, if we had never gone there physically, I probably would have gone on 1-2 dates max and been like, yeah, we have nothing in common, or we have very different callings on our life. So it would have cut things out pretty quickly. I think another thing is, there's 2 other things I have to say, is the building of integrity through delayed gratification. So we are a culture that says like, I want what I want when I want. And I live in New York City where I can order any sort of takeout at any time of the day, 24 hours a day.
Which sounds marvelous to me.
It's amazing. But then you're also like this entitled brat of,
right.
I want Indian food at 3 a.m. and you guys better serve me. But just that idea of like, when I tell myself no to something that may feel good in the moment, because like sex and physical intimacy, like that was designed for goodness. Like God created the male and female body and said, it is good. All of it is good. So that means all the things, all the body parts are good. But when I say no to something good, because I am believing in something that could possibly be greater, like that is strengthening a muscle in me that goes well beyond romantic relationships and sex. And I think in addition to that, we create patterns in our lives that don't just magically change when I have a diamond ring on my finger. So if I am being promiscuous sexually with guys when I'm dating, or maybe I'm not, maybe it's just like I am doing that I'll be in committed relationships and going there physically. Our patterns of behavior don't just magically like change overnight. Like we have to set ourselves up for that. So if I'm like dating around like crazy, messing around like crazy, sleeping around, then I bring that into my marriage. And so I have to think about, what is the future I want? What is the type of marriage I want? What is the type of man I am looking for? So, you know, I'm going to say no to these things now to strengthen a muscle of saying no, when maybe I'm 10 years into marriage and me and my husband don't really have a great sex life anymore because we're tired and there's kids running around. But then I go on this business trip and this guy is really good looking and we have fun and we connect. Like, I think that is where those muscles of integrity really get opportunity to work.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like the third thing, sorry,
No,
you asked,
I
do
love
have any
it.
soapboxes? And I'm like, well, I clearly live on a soapbox. I think the last thing is like Genesis 1 says that God makes man and woman. He says, let us make man and woman in our image and our likeness. And the Latin phrase for that is imago Dei. And so like man and woman, like who Catherine Harris is, like, I matter and I am really valuable. And there's a sacredness to my body. And as there is to every human being. And so there should be a high price for intimacy, because there is a imago Dei pulsing all through me. And I love the continuation of the Genesis 1 story when God creates Adam and Eve, and God lets Adam do all of these other things. Like he gives Adam a career, he gives Adam purpose, like name all the animals, do all these things. And Adam is doing them, but he also knows something is missing. And then he puts Adam to sleep and begins fashioning woman. And I just get this picture of like him like buffing her skin, and she's like shiny and bright and glowing. And this epic moment of bringing Adam and Eve together. And Adam's only response to her was to like burst into poem and song and say like, you at last, like bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And then the verses following that talk about like, then a man shall leave his parents and be united with his wife. And those verses really stuck out to me. I was like, what does that mean? Like, what is the cultural significance of like the whole leave and cleave thing? Well, in Hebrew culture, a man left home once in his life. And he left home when he was getting married. And so he was making a public declaration that, hey, I just want my family to know. I want the community to know. I want the world around me to know that I am so serious about this woman right here that I will publicly leave home, perhaps change careers, leave the family business, build a home for her, so that you guys all know, like, I am serious about this person. That's how much I respect her. That's how much dignity I have for her. And that's what she's worth. So he goes to great lengths to honor this woman. And then they get married and have sex. And I remember reading that after going through like that really hard breakup I was telling you about, where I was like holding on to my V card with a very thin string.
Right.
And I was like, that's the type of love I want. I want a man who is public about his feelings for me, a man who is willing to do something that might feel inconvenient, that is willing to step out and say, you know what, everyone, I want to pursue this woman so boldly and so fast and so intentionally that I'm willing to make real shifts and change in my life. I might even leave home and change my career so that I can build a life with this woman. And I think we have like online dating culture that's like swipe left, swipe left, swipe right, whatever it is. And we go on dates and people have one night stands. And I'm like, that's not what we really want. Like it's degrading to the amount of date in us. And I mean, I just know people aren't getting the results that they want.
Okay. Here's what I love about you right now. Number one is, I am always telling girls who are dating guys that that you want him to want you. Obviously we want to be wanted, right? But you want him to control himself so that when you are married for 10 years and things aren't the same. So I love that you said that, because that is something that I'm like, yes, because marriage in 10, 15, 20 years, it doesn't feel the same as that first year, because you have kids and careers and life and bills and la, la, la. Also right now, Kat, you are giving so many single women who are listening, like so much encouragement and just a reminder of like, this is possible. And B, we are holding out for the greater, like the greater is what is there. And thirdly, there are women right now texting their brothers or their sons or their coworkers. I'm like, I found a wonderful woman for you.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. How I will do a follow-up interview when we're planning for my wedding, because I met my husband through being on your podcast.
Oh my gosh, I would have to like broadcast live from the wedding. I mean, this is just what would have to happen. So if anyone wants to connect someone that they love, that is going to be a man that declares their love for Kat and loves her and waits for her and loves Jesus, this is your time.
This is your time.
Oh man, it is so wonderful to have this conversation and to hear you talk about this. And I get a lot of requests from people to saying, "Hey, can you have more single girls on the show?" And so it's not that I don't go out and look for people who are single or married. It's just how the cards fall. And so I know that there are women who are just cheering, thinking that you're on today. So it's been so fabulous.
Oh,
okay, Kat, I end every interview asking these two things: what are you reading, and what three things are you loving?
Oh my gosh. I knew you were going to ask these questions. So I was like journaling about it yesterday. And
I cannot wait.
Okay. Three things that I'm loving right now. Okay. Justin Baldani's TED Talk. Have you heard of it? Have you listened to it?
Tell me more.
Okay. Justin Baldani plays Raphael on the TV show Jane the Virgin.
Which is that a good show? I've never seen it.
Okay. I totally got addicted to it a couple years ago. It's funny. It's like preposterous, like silly.
Okay.
So yeah, I like it. But essentially this guy, the lead actor, he plays and has been sort of typecasted the majority of his career to be this playboy kind of womanizer. But in his personal life, he's committed to his wife. He has 2 children and really believes in this huge message of reclaiming masculinity and kind of tearing down this cultural expectation on men to be machismo or bros, and really owning vulnerability, respecting women. And so recently he did a TED Talk all about this. And I've listened to it so many times. Think I've told everybody in my life, I'm like, you have to listen to this. But the thing is that we're in such a time right now in our society where, you know, there's stuff like the Me Too movement happening. We have, you know, the gender gap, inequality, all these things are kind of hot topic buttons right now. And it's important that as women, we speak up about that, but it's also so important that men have a voice to speak into healing and redemption in this area of our lives too. And for a strong man to say, hey, men, it is time to rise up and be a real man. To be a man does not mean I never cry or I'm not vulnerable, make fun of other people. But to be a man is to hold space and honor the women in my life. It means to be vulnerable with other men with what I'm struggling with. And that is like Justin Baldani's like what he feels like is his calling. So
I love that.
It's awesome. I'll send you the link to it.
I would love to see it. And we'll link it as well. Okay. That TED Talk, what else are you loving?
Okay. The other two are smaller, but I got super into boxing this year.
Are you serious?
Yes. So there's this thing called Rumble Boxing in New York City. Let me just be real honest. The only reason I ever found out about this boxing studio is because Justin Bieber posted it on his Instagram.
Which I love following Justin Bieber on Instagram, by the way.
Justin, love you, praying for you.
Yes.
I just love Justin. So I went to this boxing studio and I was like, oh, seriously, the lights are off for 45 minutes and you're punching this bag and like I'm screaming. I'm like, ah! Yeah.
Is anyone else screaming or just you?
I don't know. Probably just me.
I love that. I have a visual. Keep going.
Yeah. And they're playing like 90s R&B and hip hop.
Yes.
And just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like kind of like
a little
awesome.
Yeah. I was going to say something else, but yes.
Yeah. So I was like, I feel like I've done yoga for so many years, and boxing for me was kind of this re-entry to like, all right, like I can do this and I'm strong and I can kick your butt. And
yes.
So that.
Okay. Boxing. What else?
The third thing is plants. I mean, I'm sitting in my bedroom right now and I have 3 plants in my room. Oh no, 4 or 5. Oh my gosh. I'm a plant lady. But I read this quote recently that said like the plant lady is the new cat lady. And I was like, in Jesus' name, I'll take
it. Don't want to be the cat lady, but a plant lady is good.
Yeah. So I mean, girl, I could not keep a succulent alive for the life of me. And then a couple years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a plant and I'm not going to kill it, and I'm going to love on it. And then just like slowly over time, like I bought this ivy, and I just bought this fern. It's funny. I bought it on a date with this guy that I'm not dating anymore. And then
it's
my
like
love
y'all's
fern died. You let us die.
I love that movie.
It died, but then I'm like resuscitating it. And so it's like my thing. So
okay.
Plants are like,
I love how you started with one. It's your whole little, sustainable transformation there. And now you have all these plants. Plants are really good for you. Yes. So I like that.
It's a de-stressor. It, brings more good air into the room.
Yeah, totally good for you. Okay. What are you reading?
Books I'm reading. Okay. So hopefully you're not judging me when I tell you the books I'm reading.
No judgment.
I love escapism. I feel like, you know what? Sometimes I just want to, I go through phases of like reading like super intense leadership and theology books. But now I'm in a place where I'm just wanting to read really light. So I'm currently rereading Mindy Kaling's,
so good.
Why Is Everyone Hanging Out With Me? It is. Seriously, I was reading it on the subway yesterday, and it's like a packed subway, and I was just cackling out loud. I love it. And then I love children's books. And one of my favorite, I'm reading 2 books by this author right now, Madeline Engel. Do you know her?
Is that A Wrinkle in Time?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, I've read A Wrinkle in Time. That's all I've read of hers.
Oh my goodness. Okay. You have to read her other stuff. So I'm rereading A Wind in the Door, which is a sequel to A Wrinkle in Time. Okay. And that series was my favorite series when I was in elementary school. And then I reread them a couple years ago with my baby sister when she was in elementary school as well. And I realized, oh my gosh, this woman is a Christian. Like these books are laced with scripture and biblical truth. And I think that is one thing I love so much about like children's books and fiction is there can be these like really beautiful and compelling truths in them.
Totally.
So Wind in the Door. And then Madeline Engel, she's not just a children's writer. She does like creative nonfiction and memoir. And so later on in her life, she wrote a series of memoirs about being a grandma and her spiritual journey. And I'm rereading for like the 3rd time the first book in that series called A Circle of Quiet.
Okay.
And the amazing thing about what I love about Madeline Engel is I feel like reading this book for the first time, I was like, I feel like there's someone out there that is like me. Like she really, really loves God and is like faithful to her family, but she like doesn't really fit in this, or she didn't fit in this like mold of like Christian woman.
Right.
But she was really unafraid to be herself, and she persevered through a lot in her life. And so I love the way she processes life.
I love that. I didn't know that about her. And my only reference to her is A Wrinkle in Time that I read last year. And the movie's coming out.
I know. I'm so excited about it.
My kids are excited as well. And of course, I always am like, you have to read the book first.
Right.
And then I cave because I'm like, oh, the movie looks so good. Well, Kat, thank you so very much for chatting with me today. I'm telling you, we have covered, the online world, anxiety, telling yourself truths to, transforming and saving yourself for marriage. And it's just been a wonderful conversation. So thank you so very much.
Oh, I'm so grateful. Thanks for listening to all my rambles and rants. And
your rambles and rants matter. And
thank you.
You matter. And so does that Bible degree. So
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Y'all, wasn't that a great fun hour with Kat? Okay, what if we really did have a happy hour wedding? Like someone hooked up Kat and they met because of the happy hour and then I was there. How fun. You guys, sustainable transformation is a conversation that has come up often on this show. And so I'm taking note, and hopefully you are as well. You know what? You don't become a marathon runner overnight if you've never run one lap around your block. Single girls, in case you missed this or just need another reminder, listen to this again one more time from Kat.
I've finally got to a place where I know that I know that I know that I know that I would rather be single than be with a man that's not a good fit for me, a man that doesn't love Jesus. I know that if God has a man for me, it's a man that loves him deeply, has a tender heart for the Lord, has integrity and vision for his life, and supports the vision that God has for my life.
Guys, also, if you're loving the show, one thing that we would love from you is a review over on iTunes. It really helps more people find the show, and that's what we want. Look at this fun review we got recently. This review is from Montalyn, and it says, "Thank you for your honesty and humor. I look forward to each podcast where I can laugh, cry, and take something away from it that gives me hope. Thank you for being real and honest." This review is from What's the Point of One? That's what they said their name was. And here's what they said. "If Jamie asked me what I was loving right now, the happy hour with Jamie Ivey would be at the top of my list. I look forward to each week's episode and savor that hour. She has such a wide variety of wonderful guests on the happy hour, and each one inspire me in all aspects of my life. I laugh, cry, feel heartbreak, and rejoice with these women as if they were some of my own best babes. Even though I'm in my mid-20s, I love how relatable each episode is. I feel encouraged and mentored by these women. The happy hour is my favorite podcast by far, and I can't recommend it enough." You guys, thank you so much for those reviews. They really do help other people find the show. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Don't forget, guys, for a healthy and delicious snack that lets your kids explore, play, and be their best, you've got to try Go-Go Squeeze. Go-Go Squeeze, made from 100% all-natural fruit with no artificial anything. Nothing but orchard fresh apples and other wholesome fruit, all in a squeezable pouch that's ready to go wherever they go. There's over 25 tasty varieties that kids will love and that you can feel great about too. Go-Go Squeeze fruit on the go pouches. Find them in the applesauce aisle today. Today's show was edited by Chris with Podshaper, and the music was developed for the show by Matt Graham. Next week, my guest is me. It's going to be me, and I'm talking all about my book, If You Only Knew. It's going to be so much fun. A lot of people who have read the book have said, man, it was so great to hear your stories. Because on the happy hour, we get to hear other people's stories. And this book, If You Only Knew, brings you into my world. So I'm going to be on the podcast talking about the book. Guys, enjoy your week. Share the show with a girlfriend and have a happy hour with a friend.